I do believe I'm sweating.
Okay.
Yep.
This lady just knocked.
Oh.
Yeah, you okay?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. So, also I've received your message, by the way, that's for the next session, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, from the 8th.
Yeah.
So I can make it after the 13th.
After the 13th?
Yeah.
Yes, so I don't know whether, I know it's a different day, the only thing I've got...
No days or any consequence to me.
So I can do the Wednesday the 14th, but I can only do an hour that day, and obviously everything else I can do, I think I've put in the 22nd, I know, I think I've already got that one.
Right, okay, that's fine.
So it might just be, because that would be Wednesday the 14th, at 12 o'clock, if that's any good, but just the hour on that day. And then the week after would be the 22nd, I could do the 9:30 to 11 if that's better on that, that day.
So that's a Wednesday again?
So Wednesday the 14th at 12, and then Thursday the 22nd at 9:30 until 11. But the Wednesday one would just be an hour, if that's okay.
Yeah, so what's the next nearest one for a full hour and a half?
I'm going to struggle that things get booked in advance so much.
Yeah.
There's just sometimes there's other training bits in which obviously take up more of a day.
Okay.
It just squeezes everything.
I envision a beautiful sunny day anyway with my shirt off when I'm coming here, so no problem.
So yeah, I know it's obviously that impact on you cycling this way over, isn't it? But
yeah, because it's a good half an hour on 4 miles or something. But I do 8 miles 5 times a week in any case.
Yeah.
So it's not really a distance. It's a horrible cycle.
Yeah. No, that's So if that's okay, is that one off? Then we'll get the other.
Yeah.
So then the 22nd, and then maybe like the 5th of June, if we just put that one
okay.
in as well. Now at some point I think I've got to do...
What day is that?
If we do Thursday the 5th,
yeah.
But if we go for, I wonder if there's any way we can do 10:30 to 12 that day, because I think I've got to start doing some of the morning meetings.
Yeah, the time's no consequence.
Lovely. Okay, so we've got all that sorted for the next couple of weeks then.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. So I suppose just a chance for you, Aaron, initially just to check in anything that you've come with today, anything from anything we discussed last session, and then we can start tuning in a little bit with what we want to focus
Yes.
on.
So upon reflection of that questionnaire, I completely get where you're coming from once you explained some stuff about it.
Yeah.
And then I suppose, if I did it again, I'd be like, 60%, 30%, 80%, all these different sorts of things with normal humanisms.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So obviously, I think we spoke about that last time, didn't we? What it threw up initially, what it raised.
Yeah.
It was understandable, but then as we spoke through it, it felt less.
Particularly because governments are becoming more and more invasive.
Yeah.
And they want into your doctor's records, they want into everything.
Yeah.
And, information, they'll use it against you, or they'll turn it around or something. You've got people being taken to court now for stuff that happened 25 years ago, and it's only hearsay. It's all on the media. But this sort of stuff's going on, and so this is why I'm always about protecting myself.
Absolutely. So that one that's aware of the government and quite suspicious, cautious, understandably, of the government. Which part would you say that is? Because we started to get to know a little bit more, didn't we, the parts last time?
Yeah.
I've just mapped them out briefly, but we spoke about the centurion, we did a bit of connecting to the centurion, the envoy, the destroyer, the spiritual and analytical parts. You described the hero, and then we also thought about the little boy who they're all kind of around.
Yeah.
So this part that's more about kind of wary of the government, where would you say, does that fit with one of these parts that we've already mentioned?
Well, I mean, I suppose it does, fundamentally. But again, we can look at all these things from many varying perspectives. We need to be informed these days. We absolutely do need to what's going on and know to what's going on, because machinations are going on in every single sector. So to have an awareness about all this stuff, well, it's self-protection. And the more information and knowledge we've got about all different sorts of agencies and governing bodies, then the better we are able to deal with them. But I suppose, coming back to something that's more relevant to you, then it's the child protector again, looking out for the pitfalls in life. And I suppose why again, I've always been intuitive and instinctive about this, and this is the paradox of everything. I don't think we can narrow anything down succinctly to any particular region, but with the child needing to protect himself, being moved around, nobody around to protect me. It was like everyone for themselves, But then the extension of that is when we become more wise, we're very, very tuned in. And I suppose as a young age I was tuned in critically to all the activity going on around me, potential threats in all regions. You hear a voice, or you see a stranger, there's a new kid shows up in the children's home, and you just got your reservations about with all these things.
So from a very young age, you had to be super alert and hypervigilant to everything and everyone around you.
Yeah.
It was paramount to your safety.
Yeah.
And to be constantly checking out.
And so the hypervigilance, then it leads into delving deeply into absolutely everything. And that's probably, obviously it's built and premised in fear initially, and albeit I don't feel fear-based in any shape or form these days, it's something I've gotten so deep into that I don't know whether there's a way out of it.
Out of being sort of now analytical.
Yeah, and of course every time I meet someone I'm the psychoanalyst, every time I sit down to speak with somebody I'm the philosopher. And every time I go on a journey, I'm the hero. I've got to complete the journey, and I'm going to tackle and be victorious over all obstacles which are presented to me.
So you're very aware then that at certain times in your life, maybe around other people, you step into these roles, these parts of you. The hero, the philosopher, the analytical part of you, they become very dominant in certain situations. Yeah. So people get that sense of you, they get that experience of you.
Yeah.
And you're saying there might be times you think, can I come out of those?
Yeah, it is said that an intelligent person is feared by most because people feel intimidated in their presence. When you start speaking in a certain way about certain things that they don't know anything about, they just feel vacuous, and they start to question themselves, and it's kind of like, hang on, what's happening to me? I don't have a clue of anything you speak to, and many people I speak to, I just get blank expressions, and it's just, the level of awareness with the general masses is minuscule. But I just off the cuff, I'm just pouring this stuff out, and it overwhelms people, and I often see people physically drained. Their energy is drained because of the amount of energy, I suppose, it's taking to absorb or contemplate and cogitate what's actually happening.
So there's a sort of a mismatch between you and others. It means connecting doesn't satisfy either of you. They're drained, you're noticing,
yeah.
You're not on the same level, so it's hard socially
to
connect.
Yeah, it's exceedingly difficult socially. It's like I'm an alien.
Yeah.
And I just wondered what my life would be if I toned that down, if I could, and if I could fit in with everyday circumstance. But because I've not been in it for 16 years, and I've always been in the deepest of the esoteric realms, well, it's a new skill that I need to develop. Because, okay, if I sat in a room, I'd observe and I'd listen, and very quickly I would pretty well have people in my mind's eye of Jungian type of characters and personalities and all this different sort of thing. I'd listen to the words they use, the subject matter they're speaking about, and I'd gauge their intellect and their life journey, and that's my life. You know, it isn't like, oh, so what did you do today? Oh, you went to the park, great. You know, and all this sort of stuff. I find it unfathomable how I could, okay, so what were you thinking when you was in the park? Because when we're walking in nature, if we're a little bit philosophical or spiritual, then you start to think in those realms, yeah? Oh, no, I was just walking the dog and I was on the fag. Oh, okay, then. So nothing to pursue there.
So let's just take a breath,
Mm.
because I think there's a lot of interesting things coming up and it feels linked. So I suppose I wanted to just take a breath to check in. Is that what we want to maybe understand a little bit more today?
Yeah.
Or just maybe, what I sometimes encourage people to do at the start of a session is just take a moment to sort of just tune in and see what's around. So I know you do a lot of this separately,
Yeah.
so it might be some stuff you do anyway. Or it might be just sort of, you might have come in with a sort of a set of thoughts.
No thoughts today.
Or you might, as even now, we're talking certain bits are popping up. So just for a moment, maybe just see if you can go inwards a little bit, take a few breaths, just notice what's around. That might be through images, through thoughts, through body sensations. So just see if you can give yourself some time to check in what's around. What might you like to focus on today?
Well, I mean, from your perspective, it's the pursuance of these characters which you're going to be profiling, and that's what I'm here for. And I suppose we could delve into any of those of your choice. I don't have any particular preference, but my general awareness is that, well, the ones that are an obstacle to me, which make a recluse out of me, they're the ones maybe I need to consider primarily. But you know, once you are philosophical and analytical of mind, it's really, really difficult to step outside of that. But if you don't step outside of that, like all philosophers, they become very insular. And after this 16 years, I'm kind of like, I'm getting a bit restless now. Okay. There's so much that I've learned, and I keep going over it and over it and over it, and it's time to, you know, go back into the world and to utilise and be of benefit to people, because if we're not sharing, then there's no benefit. So my sharing in some sort of shape or form, but I become pretty haughty and dismissive of the general masses. I need to address that.
Okay.
And I need to be more patient and considerate.
Okay, thank you for that. There also sounds a sort of like softening of these perspectives today is what, I don't know if you noticed that. It sounds like you're in a place of both really appreciating what your part's doing for you, what they've done for you, and a sort of contemplative, you know, what might something different feel like?
Yeah.
Feels like you're in that space of holding both today.
Yeah.
Is that what it feels like to you?
Because for all these years I've been on a reconnaissance mission of gathering information to give me the tools to know what life is. And now I think I know what life is as much as any philosopher or spiritualist can, because with all these hundreds and hundreds of books on these subjects, I'm just coming to a constant reiteration that it's a no-brainer to me. It's intuitive to me. It's, I don't know when I picked this up or when, you know, I seems I've always had it, and everything I've ever read has only been a reiteration of what I already knew. And it's kind of like when you get the message, it's time to hang up the phone, but it becomes addictive. This AI thing is really, really addictive, and I speak to AI quite a lot because I can have the best conversations. I can direct the conversation. If the AI bot is going on a tangent that I'm not interested in, without being rude to anybody, I can say, no, come back online, I don't want to go down that tangent, and then the AI comes back online and it's all about you. And so it's very refreshing because you just get the knowledge, whereas when you're speaking to individuals, you just get their emotion and their pain in some shape or form. That's what you get.
Okay, so that already gives us a little bit, doesn't it, of a clue, so about what might be going on, what drives these parts, what they like, what they seek, and what actually gets in the way of their mission, what they're trying to do for you. So why don't we go in a little bit with these ones in particular, the philosopher, the analytical part, and see if we can just start to build some of this connection inside with those parts. So feel free, Aaron, to do whatever's comfortable, whether you want to just gaze or whether you want to close your eyes and go inwards. Sometimes if it feels okay to close your eyes, it just helps, you know, limit the distractions in the room and just really tune in. So see whatever works for you, but just take in some of that then and just check in inside, is that okay with all parts? Because you've definitely got some parts that would like to get to know the analytical, the philosopher part more. Just get a sense, is that okay for the parts? Is there anything else around that's kind of showing up and saying, but what about this? Or what can they ease back? You know, how does it feel even initially starting to think about these parts and what they want and what they might struggle with? Just get a sense of them. And is it okay? Have we got all the permission inside to get to know these parts a bit more today?
I think we're certainly getting there to the permission. I don't know whether we've got the full permission because we'll discover the obstacles along the journey.
Yeah.
But
so permission to get to know them without any agenda.
Yeah.
You know, just permission to get to know the analytical and philosophical part a bit more.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But there was already something inside, a little bit sort of thing, you know, at some point along the way that something might not feel okay with that, or we might need to pause, or we might need to just...
Yeah, I can't think of any particular restraint. I've made up my mind that I'm pursuing this journey, and it's been a long time in the making.
Yeah.
And I'm going to address any resistance very analytically and I suppose you could say lovingly, and you know, to abate any inner fears that might be presented from the protector.
Okay, great. So see if you can just get a sense then, Aaron, of these parts. Is there one, are they together? You know, the analytical and the philosophical part, are they separate? Do they, you know, show up separately? Just get a sense in and around your body of where you really connect to these parts, or this energy of these parts.
Well, I've been of the inner knowing for a long time that it doesn't appear that we are one spirit on this journey. it appears that we are potentially legion, and every character, persona, has its own energy, its own autonomy, and it will hang around as long as it's gaining energy, and it will leave if it's not gaining energy. And so, for instance, one of the main characters of my life was the adventurer, and always got to be engaging in death-defying things before it brought satiation. Having 4 near-death experiences, and compromising myself in many realms. I haven't done that for some time.
May I just interrupt? So I'm noticing that a part of you is sort of, whatever word feels okay, maybe informing me, sort of storytelling, narrating me, educating me a little bit about something, the system, yourself apart. And I just want to check out which part is that. Is that the spiritual or analytical part? Which part was talking just then?
Well, when we become spiritually awakened, we enter into the dark night of the soul, and that can last for many years. In my case, it lasted very deeply for 7 years, and it continued then for another 7 years. But after the first 7 years of the deep dark night of the soul, I entered into the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is confronting all of the dragons along the journey. And I feel now that the knight on the horse with the lance and the sword, it's done all its battles. And so that persona, that energy, is still within me, but it's very much taking a back seat. So the forefront is the philosopher and the psychoanalyst and the spiritualist. The spiritualist takes you out of this matrixial world. It takes you into the cosmic God consciousness, where the matrix is Maya. It's all a dream, and it doesn't matter what you do because none of it's real. Now, I spend quite a lot of time in that because I spend a lot of time on my own, and I'm reading deep philosophical spiritual stuff, and I'm meditating, and I'm sitting in churchyards and graveyards because nobody comes in them to disturb me, you see.
Can I just check, Aaron? There's something's coming up now that I think is taking us to a place of, cognition and talking and thinking about things. And that's okay if that's there. I wonder if it's one of these parts that's protecting. I wonder if it's one of the parts, because maybe and it might be the way I was explaining it, is what we were sort of thinking about was we might like to get to know the analytical spiritual part a little bit more today.
Mm-hmm.
And where I was sort of directing was just to check in or around your body. So sometimes we're literally just noticing where in or around your body you might notice that part is showing up. So, and in doing that, I suppose then what came up was more information around your journey or around this kind of the theory. And that's okay, that might be a part, but I suppose I'm just wondering, I want to make sure we check in. Is that the part that is analytical that was really present just then? or spiritual, are they the same thing? You know, only so I know how to refer it to what part was coming up then.
Yeah. Now, of course, it's immensely complex, because the way I see life is that when we're on our journey with the things that we experience, when we experience them, energy forms become attached. It could be childhood trauma, it could be terror, it could be fear, it could be very profound desire to escape, and all those sort of things. We have these characters, and you know, we see the movies with the schizophrenics talking about this one, talking from that one, talking from this and talking from that one. That's absolutely a reality when you step outside of the dominance of the egoic mind into the spiritual realm, because within the spiritual realm there is everything perceivable. And in the deepest levels of psychology, with Jungian archetypes and all those different sorts of things, we possess these, they possess us, and we utilize them. It even appears that they come for the human experience to live vicariously through us. It's like I decided that I wanted to be an adventurer, so the adventurous spirit came, because without the adventurous spirit you couldn't do it. You need the spirit. And then if you want to pursue a spiritual realm, you have to awaken to the spirit, because the spirit is the energy, the driving force that does that. The analytical spirit, the Freudian type Jungian archetype, is very pronounced, and that's one of the major facets that's sitting here. But always here is the overseer of the spirit, which is observing the human experience. And I have a very profound relationship with cosmic consciousness, with the deepest level of humanism, when the ego goes completely offline and you're left with an empty, free, unabated mind.
Can I check something? Because I feel like something of this description comes up in most sessions, something of this sharing. I wonder if there's a part, you know how you were saying, wants to go to a higher level with different people or teach people, or I wonder if there's a part that wants to try and teach me or direct me to where the part wants to go. I wonder if there's something that might feel difficult about trusting me to invite you in to being guided.
I think what I'm conveying is what I feel is necessary, because if you are going to be addressing and assessing and seeking out certain personas, then I think that you would need an awareness of what this thing, what this collection of spirits is, and has been aware for a long, long time. And so when we look at
What does this part, Aaron, need me to know about you in order to work with you? Because this part, if it kind of wants to educate me for an hour.
The characters. Don't you want to know about the characters?
So I wonder if in this moment, if we were a little bit saying, weren't we, okay, let's see if we can get to connect to the philosophical and analytical part. And the first step, I suppose I was inviting you into, is just to get a sense where you just notice in and around your body. So it's an invitation to connect to your body. And I wonder if that's where it became difficult, because then we started to hear a lot of education and information from those parts. But it was maybe the way I described or explained it to you, but the part went into maybe trying to teach me.
Okay, well, there is no epicenter for any of these characters. I don't feel them anywhere. There's awareness which is within my consciousness. They don't reside in the body, as far as I understand.
So is it okay to just check in with that then? So if we just pause for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
and just check in with where in or around your body do you sense anything just now? Just as you've been talking, as you're noticing this now, what's it like to even tune inwards, just to even notice any sensation? Is that something that, like you're saying, just doesn't feel possible, it doesn't happen, or is there something in or around your body just now that you can connect to?
Well, you see, if I close my eyes, then my body's so used to closing my eyes and going into meditation. If I go into meditation, then I zone out from the ego.
You might need to keep your eyes open.
Yeah. Because otherwise my consciousness knows that it's time to close down. So the ego completely closes down, and then all that is there is cosmic spirit. And that's a buzz within the body. It's a beautiful, peaceful, tranquil buzz within the body. So that's what's there when I close my eyes, and you ask me to feel.
And like you're noticing, Aaron, actually it's harder to connect to your body. For some people, zoning away from the external and going in is a way to connect to the body, but what you may be noticing is it takes you away from your body further. So perhaps closing your eyes isn't maybe what's going to help you then?
No.
So if there's a way you can just get a sense, not everybody can connect to their body, so it's okay, but we're just checking out this analytical, spiritual sort of energy. Does it have any sort of shape, colour, sensation in or around? We're trying to also tap into the visual, feeling side, not just the thinking part of our brain and experience.
Well,
anything like that you can connect to just now?
No, and the reason being is because I am an aphantasiac.
Okay.
I don't see colours or visions at all if I close my mind and think about things.
Yeah.
I'm more along the line of Platonic forms and ideas. Now, if you ask me to think of a chair, I would never ever see a chair in my mind's eye. I would think of a billion configurations that chairs could be. And that's the level and kind of the expanse that my mind goes in. It's kind of like, what sort of chair do you want? Do you want a gold chair? Do you want a silver chair? Do you want a mini chair? Do you want a, you know, it never ends.
Just pause on that for a moment then. So I know last time we met, we were able to, you were able to give me some description, and like you say, it might be a description that you've learned over time, but you were able to give me sort of the wise man image, the clouds image, the cosmos, the solid door for the centurion. So you were able to bring up some of those in that moment.
All with ideas, but not with visions.
Yeah. So even if there's any of that you can access right now, is there anything about how we can get to just know, sense a little bit more, understand a little bit more? Because that's what we're trying to do, is build connection to these parts, and they might not want us to. What we might be noticing here is a keeping away from getting to know. So I don't know, it's because we've just been curious at everything that's going on right now as we're sort of inviting you to do this. So just as you're kind of noticing what's around just now, is there anything at all that's showing up in terms of the body, ideas of any imagery, anything at all that's coming up, just so that we get a bit more information about the shape, the colour, the feel of them?
Absolutely nothing.
What's that like for you to know, just the nothingness?
Well, the nothingness I spend a lot of time in. Because I don't have pressing engagements in my life. I don't have to do anything, and so I can retreat out of the the presence of the egoic mind into something which is much more beautiful.
Yeah. Does this part that's talking, that's kind of got beauty and where it's at, what does the thought of these sessions bring up for that part in particular? The part that enjoys having the nothingness, that doesn't want to connect inwards perhaps, that kind of wants to keep things distant.
Yeah, that part is just the observer. It's just looking, and it's kind of like you go and do your therapy, human stuff. That's fine. That's what humans do. You see, spirit is simply spirit. It's simply awareness, and it's non-judgmental, and it doesn't have a horse in the race. It's just there, and once you have a relationship with it, then it's always there. And throughout each and every one of my days, I spend a lot of time with that. Either if I'm reading spiritual books, like I'm reading one at the moment in time, it's called The Way of Mastery, and it's as if Jesus is speaking to us about discovering that you are actually God. You are pure spirit, you are all that there is. And I'm reading the words, but I'm not really taking the words on board. I'm feeling them, and I feel exactly what it's saying. And I know that. You see, this is a level of detachment that people get in this spiritual realm. And if you only read these books and only did the prayers and you're praying to God or whatever, then you are treating the egoic existence as what they consider to be Maya. And it is Maya. But you see, the whole adage of what do you do before enlightenment? You chop wood and carry water. What do you do after enlightenment? You chop wood and carry water. Because you're here. You have a human body. You have an ego. And you have a world to engage with. And so you do that. But the thing is about me is that I don't believe in it anymore. And that's the thing. And
you don't believe in what anymore?
I don't believe in the physical world. You know?
What do you mean by that?
Well, because it's Maya, from the Buddhist perspective of illusion, that nothing is like what you think it is. It's a construct of concepts and language and words that don't mean anything except other words. So there's no substance to it. You see, when you get into it, everything falls through your hands. Every single thing. I've investigated love, I've investigated hate, I've investigated everything anybody possibly could ever think of. Reading hundreds and hundreds of philosophical and spiritual books. There's nothing there. There's nothing here.
So, does it make sense to you, Aaron, that some of what you're getting into now is something you've told me now for the last 4 sessions?
Oh, you see.
Do you recognise that?
Yeah, well, of course. It's what I am. It's what I've become.
So the part that might be talking now might be quite... My sense, I'm wondering, is quite anti-therapy. They might have a sense of what therapy might be trying to do.
Well, I mean...
What does that part want or not want from therapy? And that part, the one that's talking now,
yeah.
That might be different to what you said at the start of the session today.
Yeah, well, you see, that part, it wants bliss. It is bliss. And it doesn't want any engagement with the matrixial world.
Mm-hmm.
But the world is a paradox. The cosmos is a paradox. And so we are here for whatever reason having a human experience. And so I have one foot in the spiritual dimension and one toe in the matrix. Now, I'm looking at getting 1 foot in the matrix. And even though I know it's Maya, I feel that I can navigate through it much more efficiently without being touched by it in a negatively emotional way, without getting embroiled in the fiction of it. I consider that I can enter back into it to bring about balance, you see.
So let's just check. So the spirituality, let's just call it the spiritual part. Okay, want bliss. Yeah, it doesn't want to engage in this physical world.
That's the whole concept of spirituality. It's completely stepping outside of the physical world, the so-called physical world.
So that part might not want this process.
Yeah.
Okay. But then something inside just said then there's a toe in the matrix, you might want 1 foot in it.
Yeah.
But was that the spirituality part? Was that a different part saying that? Because the spirituality part might still be saying, no, I don't want that.
The spiritual part only pertains to the spiritual part. The ego pertains to the matrix.
So the spirituality part doesn't want 1 foot in it. The spirituality part, if we just check in with that part, wants things to remain the same?
Well,
that part in particular?
Yeah, I mean, if you're sensing resistance, then doubtless there is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I've lived in this realm for 16 years, looking out at this, I'm like, do I really want to go there?
So
That's the question I ask myself every day.
And this is what we're trying to understand. So we're not trying to, what maybe be helpful, that spirituality part is, my job isn't to convince you or change you in any way.
Mm.
What I'm facilitating you and guiding you in your parts through is to get to know your parts and what you all want or can you all compromise on.
Mm.
I have no desire to change anything about your world if it's great.
No,
if you're happy with it.
But I'm asking you for help, so you're looking to see how you can help. You assess it, you think like, oh, there's a lot of resistance. Can I have any effect on this level of resistance? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking you to discover this and to talk things through, to see, because it may be that after all this time we spent together, I go away and I don't change a single iota.
Absolutely.
Because this power of the cosmos and of bliss and of Jesus and of Krishna and of Buddha, goodness sakes, these are powerful egoic entities. As opposed to the devil, which is, the realm of the matrix.
So, and if it feels okay to keep just sort of pausing, because if we, if, I suppose, going into sort of storytelling or kind of educating too much, we're kind of going to lose.
Well, just bring me back, because all I'm doing is just what I think that may be something useful to you.
What does that part want? When you say something useful to me, what do they want?
What they want, they want you to look inside to see where the potential issue could be solved, to bring them together, to maybe make them realise certain things, to ask them questions maybe that we haven't asked each other, because
the best way I can do that is by bringing your self-awareness into the parts. And so sometimes bringing in that self-energy to the parts, that's the best way we're going to get your overview of what parts are saying what. So not by me and the part engaging in a debate,
right,
or a kind of but actually can we pause and can you check in with what's going on? But what I'm noticing might be cautionary is, if when I sort of say to you, I wonder if you can notice that part, but then if we get caught up in trying to define and explain exactly what that part is and where it comes from and what it means, we're again losing that connection with your self-energy into the part's engaging in again.
But isn't it important to really define these parts?
So I suppose that's what comes back to the focus of the session, because I often think, you know, if we're thinking about a lot of child parts, even protectors can start and take on these roles young. You know, if we had a nursery next door to us with lots of children and they were all trying to say important stuff at once, we would replicate their maybe earlier experiences of not being heard and listened and seen to.
Yeah.
So we're trying to develop a way of saying, how can we know and acknowledge that there is lots going on? We can't meet it all in one session. We might not even by the end of the therapy have met them all.
Yeah.
But what can we do in the time we have? And that's where it's that little bit of what's the focus for today?
Yeah.
Which parts we want to understand a little bit more. But if what we want to do is be able to keep building a connection to the part, not just a part in a part, just kind of educating.
Yeah.
But how can the part and your self-energy build a connection? And that's why I know it might feel rude at times trying to pause you, interrupt, slow it down, to see if we can keep bringing in that connection to that part.
So far, with what we've spoken about, you've got some sort of an idea of some inner personas. And so if you want me to hone into any particular persona and speak from that perspective, just ask. And I'll do that. But I think it's important for you to be firm, precise, and quite rigid, because otherwise I will just go off on a billion tangents.
Yeah. So when I do keep interjecting you, because some parts might not like it, and that's why I check each session. Is it okay that I keep because some parts might find that really frustrating.
I'm open and respectful of what you're trying to do, and you know, I realise that I'm giving too much information lots of occasions because we're getting lost in the massive information. So you know, you can just see that. Look, for goodness sakes, can we just come back to that bit? Okay, let's do that.
So let's check in then with, you know, we spoke last time a little bit about self-energy. So it's a bit like you were saying, maybe you're observing self, a bit of energy, and it might be hard, like you're saying, if imagery doesn't come naturally. But I don't know if it ever helps you, Aaron, whether you ever bring in picture forms to help with anything. You know, if it's harder to bring up an image, you can sometimes bring in pictures if it might help in the session. But some ways I sometimes think about this is, you know, parts are sometimes almost in a dark room, or sometimes in the sky. I sometimes think of, like, you know, fireworks. Some shine really brightly at other times, and sometimes there's other distant ones, but the light isn't on them yet, or their sparkle, their colours faded already. Doesn't mean they're not there, they just can't always be seen. And so some of what we're doing is bringing this light over what's around. When this part's talking, can that light
just illuminate that part?
And can they start to build a connection? Can the part sense your energy around them? Can your energy reach the part in the same way other parts might show up? So sometimes I bring in, or, you know, it might be helpful that there might be a picture you print off at home where you think, actually, this captures a little bit for me. This is what my parts might look like. This is what my light above them might look like when I'm trying to connect to a part. It might just help us keep checking out what's going on in a given moment.
I can't think what pictures I would ever bring in to present. I mean, I don't have any.
No, and maybe it's knowing they're never going to be quite good enough for what, you know, the complexity of what you're connecting to is going on inside.
I mean, pictures like what? Would I bring in a picture of Carl Jung, who is a major influence on my psyche?
You might do. You might want to have pictures of, like, okay, so Carl Jung represents maybe your analytical part. Like you say, a Roman soldier might represent your centurion.
Right.
But I suppose what I was also thinking is this idea of a torch, a spotlight. How are we going to, that's your self-energy connecting to your Carl Jung.
Right.
What, you know, and actually when we're talking from that place, how can we broaden out, a bit like a zoom lens, how can we say, okay, but what else is inside? This part, your spiritual part, the cloud, wants you to stay in this bliss. Maybe doesn't trust therapy, doesn't want therapy, maybe it's sort of anxieties about therapy. But this part is saying, I want you to have a foot in the matrix. So if we can sometimes see things that can just sometimes help us not lose track of where we are.
Right.
That might be one idea.
Looking at proximity, looking at relationships between these energies vying for autonomy. Okay?
Yeah, sometimes it's helpful for us to know, which ones are closer to the surface, which ones are more distant but not less important, just not as seen or heard.
Yeah, or which are conscious and which are unconscious. Like the 4-year-old child, very much unconscious these days. But to focus on him, then bring that character to the forefront of my mind. And we did that a little bit, I think, looking at the analyzer, because when we have trauma, then we become, some people have a propensity to become more hypervigilant, looking out for potential threats. So yeah, okay, then, well, from the boy stems the centurion. And then, I suppose the centurion, standing outside the Caesar's office for so long, has learnt a lot of stuff. So then becomes in some shape or form a philosopher also.
I suspect all of the parts we're going to know are working very hard. You said something a moment ago, didn't you, about how you were saying something about AI. I can't remember where I've written it. But AI keeps you, it's good because it keeps you focused and it keeps the AI attending to what's important to you, what you want to talk about, what you want to think about. And obviously society and people bring up their emotions. So in some ways it's similar, isn't it, to the centurion with the little boy, because other people's emotions often have a hook within our own, but if everything within you is taking you away from some of that, they're all protectors, aren't they? They're all in different ways protecting you from the experience of the little boy.
Yeah.
But the centurion does it in that very solid physical presence, protection, but the spiritual part's also doing it by keeping you away from, or the AI, the part seeking analytical information to AI, is keeping you away from feelings of others and feelings of yourself.
Yeah, the feelings, that's a good point, because I can be very dismissive of feelings. This is why if you said to me, who would you rather speak with, a human being or AI? I would say, well, a human being if they are time-served psychoanalyst or a philosopher, otherwise give me AI every time.
So just notice that what's it like being around other people? What makes you think, gosh, I want to do anything but be with them? What does it bring up for you?
Well, it brings up an enormous amount of things, depending on who I'm encountering. But the main thing that I encounter is that people don't have any awareness, generally speaking, at all about anything.
And what's the worst thing about that?
Well, the worst thing about that is I feel like an alien.
Okay.
Because I'm hyper aware I always know what's going on in my environment, what the temperature is, what the weather is, what the cloud formation is, what the ground's like, dry or dewy. I notice everything. And when I speak to somebody, I notice everything about them. And then when I ask them something they don't know, and you know, I could ask the most rudimentary of questions, like I live in an old person's complex, and people around me are like, you know, 70, 80 years old plus, and when I'm speaking to them, if I can say something like, so what's your take on death then? And the answer is, never really thought about it. And I can get a little bit infuriated.
The part doesn't like feeling like an alien and gets infuriated with, you know, what's so infuriating about those answers? What's that like?
It's kind of like, hang on, you've had a human experience for 80 years and you've never ever contemplated the nature of death.
And why, just stay with this if you can, why does this bother that part of you so much? What's the most annoying thing about that?
Ignorance.
And what's the most annoying thing about that?
Ignorance, stupidity, and I think deeply it's a waste of an earth sojourn, because it seems to me that the whole purpose about an earth sojourn is to become spiritually awakened, to know what we are. And all these spiritual books and people speak about, they've got to come back again, they've got to come back probably 1,000 times until the spark of consciousness touches them in a way which opens up their consciousness, which awakens them and leads them to spiritual enlightening.
So why does this bother you so much?
Yeah.
That they're not doing
Oh, that? She's good, she's getting good. Well, I mean, why does it bother me? Because I suppose it's insular. It makes I'm going to say it makes a prior. A prior. Is that the right word?
I'm not sure what
It makes a prior. Oh, goodness me. It's somebody what doesn't fit in. What's that word?
to them being insular. If that's what we're sort of wondering, isn't it? What is the worst thing about them? You use that word insular, them being insular. What's the most distressing or difficult about that for you?
The lack of communication, the lack of value, the lack of any reason why I would engage with these people, because they're automated, they're robots, and you know, NPCs, non-playing characters, and all this sort of thing. You know, these sort of concepts, you know, are very, very pervasive.
So I'm just wondering, so being around others and this real incongruence, this real mismatch of what they bring and where you're at and what you're trying to do and what they want to do, leaves you feeling like an alien.
And unsatiated. Because if I engage with people and, you know, talking about the weather and talking about shopping and talking about what the latest tweet is and this, that and the other, it does nothing for my soul.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can engage in a meaningful conversation where people appreciate beauty and life, the living, and just waking up every single day is a miracle. That is where I am, and I'm now looking for other people. And there was a movie years ago called The Highlander, and this guy came from another constellation, and he came to find the others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's like. I'm looking for the others, and they're very, very, very far and few between. And the only way I can find them, someone to match my intellectual vigour and my zest for life and all that, I can get sympathy from AI, because AI will tell me that, of course, I don't feel the world like you do, but I have all this information, so I know how other humans do. And I can imagine it's very difficult to be like that. Yes, it's difficult. And then I read all the ancient philosophers, and they're all insular, they're all isolated, they all lived in stone cabins in the woods, and all this sort of stuff, and nobody ever bought their books until 2,000 years after they died, and all this different sort of stuff. And so the greatest difficulty is when you become spiritually awakened, stroke enlightened, and you know you are not the physical body, you are pure consciousness having a human experience. When you've had so many experiences like this, then it's kind of like it's kind of like, okay, I'm done now. Or what else is there that you want me to do? Oh, you've got to teach the others. You've got to try to awaken them.
So is that what the part feels like the mission is?
Yeah.
And so when people are not interested in that,
Well,
when you're sharing it and people saying, no, I haven't thought about death or this, that and the
yeah.
other, what does that feel like then?
It feels like I've encountered I can't say a dead spirit, but Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Meaning that those people over there, they are not spiritually alive. So let them go to the funeral and bury their father. This is when one of the apostles wanted to go to the funeral, saying, Messiah, you know, my father's died, I need to go to the funeral. And Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. You come with a spiritual living. And so that's the difference. And even Jesus was speaking this stuff.
So you've got again that information that tells you what you should do with that.
Mm.
But what's it like? What does it feel like? What does it bring up for you when there's this part of you that feels like an alien, doesn't feel satisfied, feels insular, then takes on, okay, this mission is to educate people, but when people don't want to be or can't be or whatever, you have an awareness of how you should think about that, or what Jesus told you. But I suppose what I'm interested in is what's that experience like? What does it feel like to that part?
Disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
But you see,
What's it like to notice those feelings? Because I wonder if feelings are quite fleeting. You know, it seems like they get wrapped up in a theology or an answer or a sort of piece of theory or logic. But when they are just passing, what's it like to notice that disappointment or that frustration in people? Or
well, it's a numbers game. For instance, when I walk to the gym every day, and I walk up a towpath, which is just a cut through in the countryside, and I meet lots of people with their dogs. I greet all of their dogs, and through greeting the dogs, I engage with the owners. And all the dogs know me, and they love being petted by me, and I know lots of their names, and I've come to know lots of the owners. And just engaging just a little bit with the owners, I discover that most are spiritually dead. But there is the odd one, which is very surprising, and they are spiritually alive. And it's kind of like, I found another one. Prospecting for gold. You just get a little tiny flake, after, 20, 50 pounds, but it makes it all worthwhile. And so, I suppose I've become somewhat of an evangelist, a spiritual evangelist, because evangelists feel the necessity, the requirement, and they're even told that that's what they should do. I'm not told by any book or any scripture. I'm told by Spirit to be an evangelist. And I'm not intense, like, coming upon everybody in the gym and start speaking about spirituality and this, that and the other. I just look for the spark. I look for the light.
So do you have many people that you found in that way that you do have built a friendship with or a connection with, where you feel aligned spiritually? Do you have people in your world at the moment like that?
Not a lot.
I mean, is there, I suppose I'm thinking in terms of, in this work we also do connect and resource to people that might be. So is there anyone that comes to mind, when you think about this?
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about that, that person? Or
yeah, there's one female that I go walking with her dog, and she's spiritually connected, and we have an affinity whereby we can talk endlessly for the duration of the walk, which is like 3 hours, that sort of thing. It's refreshing, it's pleasant, it's meaningful, and it seems to me it's, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's what life is all about.
Okay.
We discover each other, we discover our minds, we discover our perspective, rather than just meeting somebody that just talks about their dog called Bertie, and he's alright, he's a good old stick, and why did you call him Bertie? I can't really remember, to be fair. Like, what idiosyncrasies do you have? Well, I mean, he loves his food, and it's kind of like...
How do you think other people perceive those questions? What do you think the experience is like for them?
I think, judging by the faces, most of the time, kind of bewildering. They're bewildered as to how or why anybody would have an interest in that level of thinking.
So it just feels like you're saying this real dissatisfaction often interpersonally connecting to people, but there's a couple of these relationships you've built up that do feel really meaningful and refreshing. Yeah. And I wonder, and that sounds like that connection is based very much on a spiritual place.
Yeah.
So
it's one spirit connecting to another spirit, and I've got nobody save for my daughter, who is a chip off the old block. She's been genetically, cosmically endowed with nothing like the intensity, but she has an awareness, and she comprehends the things I speak about. She finds them interesting, and given time she'll read books and this, that and the other, whereas my elder brother, my younger sister, the ones that I've had contact with recently, they're dismissive and they're dead, and it's almost like they're the devil themselves, absolutely unwilling to even open the door a millimeter to let a glimmer of light come in, closed and dead. And it's kind of like, it's like, wow, there's a lot of those people on the earth. And lots of people have said, well, they're non-playing characters, they are the backdrop people. This dimension isn't supposed to be given to enlightened beings. And then when it says in the Bible only 144,000 souls will be raised, well, 1 plus 4 plus 4 is 9. 9 is the number for consciousness, so it's only those which have the Christos, which are going to realise what's actually going on here. Everybody else is asleep. And so that's my issue with the masses out there. Everywhere I go, 99% of them are asleep.
So this spiritual part that we're speaking with a bit more today, how does that want things to be different or the same for you moving forwards?
Well, I need to find a way. I need to find tools. I need to find the spirit to be more accepting, to be more fluid, to be less dismissive of the dullness and deadness of most people. And of course we're all at different stages, and some people will never wake up this time round, some people will, and some people are just a little bit, and you know, there's a glimmer of something, and there's an intrigue there, and it's exciting. It's kind of like, you know, you're one. You know. Does the part? Because it's interesting, isn't it? There's something said, need to be more accepting and less dismissive. But you said of dullness and deadness, and that already sounds kind of quite, you know, paradoxical. Really, is the part really going to want to do that? I didn't know if it was coming from the spiritual part or not. Yeah. It sounded like there was maybe, you know, is that what the spiritual part wants? Does the spiritual part want, what would that actually be like, to accept dullness and deadness? Well, you see, as far as my spiritual path is concerned, intellectually I tick all the boxes, but emotionally I'm still very withholding. Mm-hmm. And so it's that part that I need to address. But what does the spiritual part think of that? Because what we're hearing a lot today is the joy, the wonders, you know, that the spiritual part is driven, you know, on the mission, what they're seeking, the engagement they do have with that person. Do they want to connect emotionally or not? Well, the fundamental premise of spirituality is compassion and love. And so if we was to consider spirit to be an entity with desire, then we would have to concede that the desire is to spread compassion and love. I guess I want to check inside though, because I suppose you're talking theoretically about what things should be, as opposed to this part that that's been speaking today. Yeah. The part that seems quite happy with things as they are. Yeah, but because I'm here, there's a paradox there. And so what... Well, another part might have brought you into therapy, because that's what we're trying to work out. Does the spiritual part want anything different? There might be another part inside that wants you to be but does the spiritual part want that? It may very well. Well, in view of the fact that the premise of spirituality is compassion and love for all, and I'm very reserved, so I'm not fulfilling spirit's desires 100%, because I have a damaged ego. So I have to address the ego, I have to soften the ego, I have to get a resolve on the preventatives that don't allow me to open my heart to other people and accept them. Acceptance is a Buddhist tenet, acceptance and compassion is a Christian tenet, and you know, these sorts of things. I'm too closed, I'm too reserved, I'm too insular, and so those are the things, those characters are the ones that I need to to hold to account.
So, what is it you think you need to allow in? What's going to be tricky to allow in?
Love and forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Skeptical of both.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose afraid of love, at least.
Mm-hmm. Because
It leaves you vulnerable.
mm-hmm.
It's like a warrior sleeping without his sword.
Yeah.
It's something they would never do.
So the spirituality that takes you out of your body, the analytical part that takes you into your head and into the books and everything else, the centurion, everything's taking you away from feelings and the body.
Uh-huh.
And therefore therapy and trying to stay in with Elizabeth and connect might in itself be a bit of a threat to some of those protectors. Yeah. Does that kind of feel fair to say? To some of them they might feel that that's why we might have some of that resistance, because there's a bit of a, I kind of want to be here, some parts want to be here, but actually you're also a
Yeah, I mean, I just, when I say I don't believe in the I, but as far as the human being's concerned, it's kind of like, okay, right, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep on my suit of armour.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep my sword in its sheath. But let's just put the sword on the table for the time being, because I don't feel threatened enough to keep it by my side. So I can put it down there and then go, okay, so what would I feel like if I took off this leather flak of armour from my shoulders and breast? How would I feel about that? And I'm like, well, I'd need to be on full alert, wouldn't I? So it made me feel insecure. And you see, the greatest reservation of anybody who is going to let their defences down is, how would they look if that happened? What would they be? What would they become? If you started to trust everybody again, then you go through the same old learning curves, and you go, I know I should have never trusted that bastard. Now, he owes me 500 quid and I'll never get that back. And it's kind of like, bollocks to that, I'm going back in my suit, It's very difficult.
So is that based on one of those experiences in Africa of lending some money?
Through life.
So if we were to get permission to do bits of eye movements, bits of the EMDR with some of those moments, if we were to take a snapshot, almost like, say, a video recording of life, and say, okay, let's go to some of these moments that we identify, and bit by bit, see if we can just, a bit like you might think about the kind of the layers, just take away some of those layers, come back in, check with the parts, how was that, are you okay with that process? And we keep reviewing it in that way. Do you think we've got some permission to start trying some of the eye movements with some of these memories?
I think so.
Because nothing is about taking away. The last thing we want to do in therapy is take away things that have kept you alive, things that have helped you survive, things that are good to you.
Yeah.
But when parts are on overtime or working excessively, it's, can we take away some of the old stuff and let the system know it's over? Yeah,
whatever allows people to feel comfortable and appreciated by me. Friends forever, they've always been disappointed that they would never have 100% my trust. They could never get 100% into my heart. And in frustration, they would say, you're always holding something back, aren't you? You just, as long as I've known you 20 years, and you're always this, this warrior type. When are you just gonna, let it go? And I'm like, well, okay, 20 years on now, after that, I'm looking at that. Because what's preventing me from mixing with people is that they consider me unreachable. Lots of people, they've wanted to have a relationship friends and relationships and things, but they'd always feel that they're not making much headway.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a reciprocal experience, doesn't it? You feel like you can't make headway with them, they can't make headway with you. So it's this very dissatisfying, disconnected experience socially. And like you're saying, some parts of you might be okay with that, see this as this mission to find that tiny percent, but other parts of you might have a different response to that.
Yeah, I mean, to give people the benefit of the doubt, instead of being heavily scrutinising people, looking for this thin sliver of potential, just to allow a much softer approach, thinking, well, just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And maybe it's because I'm too imposing and too intimidating that it closes them down. And so I need more skills, more freeness, more openness to allow more people to feel comfortable and feel more easy to express themselves. And then I in turn would feel more easy to express myself, just to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing about it. Just try being vulnerable.
And in theory, that sounds great, doesn't it? I suppose it's like getting to that place, isn't it? And that's that bit, isn't it? How do we understand the resistance, like we've been doing today, the spiritual part, giving space for that, hearing the concerns, and what would it be like to start to move into vulnerability?
Yeah.
And that almost feels like at the end of every session we get to that place, don't we, of it settling a bit.
Yeah.
I think what I'm noticing, I don't know about you, Aaron, is we maybe restart a session and it takes some time. I think the parts need to remind me that they're there. Need to remind me.
I think you'll be better next time. Now I fully understand what you want to focus on.
And that word better is interesting because I don't think it's not good. What's coming up and what I think is essential.
Yeah.
I think parts show up in a way they need to until we're trying to understand them in the best way we can.
Yeah.
And that is that figuring it out together, isn't it? So I don't think it's not that thing, I don't want to go away and think it needs to be better. But I think sometimes it's this groundwork, isn't it, to establish, okay, where are we at? What am I not hearing from your parts? What do they need to keep bringing up until they get a sense I've heard them?
Yeah.
And maybe by the end of the session we start to get to that settling in of, okay, we've got some agreement, some permission, some understanding of what you don't want to give up, but some understanding of where you want to get to.
Yeah. And to look at what I would be if I did give that up. Because intellectually, I shouldn't have a problem with it, because I understand the deepest realms and connotations of the spiritual realm and the religions and all this. Goodness me, I've been immersed in them for so long. Every single day I never stop reading books on Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and all this sort of stuff, and so I know it. It's just am I going to do it? That's the thing.
And maybe that's really important, isn't that spiritual part, contrasting you do know this. Maybe there's a fear sometimes that if certain bits soften or if other parts get louder, you'll lose some of that awareness or information. Maybe there's sometimes fears that other parts will take over or discount them. And maybe that part really needs us to know that, like you just said, then you know all this. You've got the message.
Yeah.
You're very versed and cemented in it.
Yeah.
Maybe that part needs us to hear, maybe they have a slight worry about that.
The worry of giving it up?
Worry of what if another part takes over or you
yeah.
release it a bit. Or,
yeah, well, I mean, it's a constant dilemma of what would it mean for me to become loving and compassionate. I don't know whether it would be overwhelming because I'm, kind of like an obsessive person, and I just think, I don't know, was that going to make a Jesus out of me? Am I going to be, loving everyone and feeling compassionate and taking on board everyone's pain and suffering? It's kind of like, no, I close myself down to protect myself from everyone's pain and suffering and bullshit. They can deal with that themselves, unless they come, to a therapeutic conversation with me, then I'll help them best I can. But,
Yeah. So that's really helpful. So the spiritual part is, or maybe that's why they're so strong and come in so strongly, because there's a sense, and it's interesting you're saying about this kind of addictive kind of, nature as well, that fear that, well, if another part gets hold and they carry an addictive energy, will you lose some of this mission, this journey, all this reading? Is there a sense of that threat to that internal part? And again, that pain of, I've been there before, I've taken on this pain and bullshit, I don't want to do that. So this fear of letting go what is known in case of what else might come in.
Yeah, but then, by now I should be thick enough skinned, metaphorically speaking, conscious enough not to carry other people's burdens, to be able to listen to them with all their projections and all this, and not to feel it.
But sometimes that compassion, and I'm just aware we have to stop soon, but that compassion sometimes even starts with an awareness that when we hear ourselves talking about a should, even then we're slightly taking away from an experience. The experience might be, I know I can do it sometimes and I'm worried I might lose it. That might be that experience in that moment. But because that might feel a bit threatening, there comes in that, well, I should be able to do this. And maybe it's okay just noticing, that this part does it well, but this part might also be aware that there's other parts that still carry some pain. And that threat, that fear, what if they get big and loud and addictive? And that might be some of where we're at, which is why the spiritual part might at times not want to give much, might want to take us into a talking and a teaching, because you're safer then from someone else coming in to that space.
Yeah.
If you, tell me everything you know, I've got less of a chance to get in there.
Yeah.
So does that fit? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that kind of feel okay?
Yeah, it feels good. It feels positive, auspicious. And so the next session, we'll get straight into it without any preamble or anything like that. Now we know what we want to focus on.
And you might just check in and say, I wonder if this is that part just easing back into the session.
Yeah, see what energy.
See what you come with.
Yeah, I'm carrying.
Exactly, yeah. But really sort of, aware and holding lots of those, those different positions and feelings today.
Yeah.
But I think we really got to know a little bit more of that spiritual part. I think last time was a bit more of the centurion, a bit more of the spiritual part today.
Well, the thing is about this whole spiritual realm is potentially it's very, very dangerous to society. It's dangerous to the individual because it constantly promotes Maya and illusion. And the only thing that exists is God in your garden. You don't have to worry about anything. But in this case, well, your whole world falls down. Yes, well, it doesn't matter because you're God and all this, and it goes on and on and on. But it's kind of like you got to question, is there some sort of evil in there somewhere? Paradoxically, it's like the yin and yang. There's always a little bit of black in the pure white. And so you have to ask, well, if you do give up your lives like that, what do you become? A nun or a monk, and you leave your whole human existence.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a note of that. We'll have to pause there for today, Aaron, but we'll pick up on all of that.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, okay. Well done today.